Fears. Fears are the adoption of the human psyche of faulty belief systems. Some of them are literally inherent and ingrained, but most of them are taught. We have a inherent fear of the dark and of death when we come into this reality. Now, the moment that we actually begin even slightly thinking for ourselves, our parents or our neighbors, friends, or relatives, okay, it doesn't really matter, will begin to basically project a lot of their own fears upon us. Okay, so whether it be a fear that you're going to be hit if you cross the road, or if you go outside, someone's going to kidnap you, parents tend to inject a lot of fears or unhealthy belief systems into us. Now, there are two inherent fears that are subconscious, okay? And these two particular fears are basically what branch off into a million different other fears. The reason why we come in with these fears is because of our form of identity, the ego. The ego does not want to dissipate. Once the ego recognizes itself, it wants to exist. Okay, so when we first come into this world, we experience the fear of the dark, and then we also experience fear of death, because death, dark might as well be the same thing. You go into a void of which your personal ego is no longer recognized, and it is no longer felt as individual. Okay, so when we first come into the planet, oftentimes we need night lights because we have this idea that there are things hiding in the dark waiting for us, or we won't be able to recognize ourselves. The biggest thing here is existence. Everything wants to exist. So once a person feels the idea, even for a moment, that their consciousness is somehow spreading out so far that they no longer recognize themselves, it becomes quite a fearful thought. Okay? Now, if there was such a thing as the machine, which there is, it does a lot of governing for this particular system, but if there was such a thing as the devil, let's just say that, if there was such a thing as Lucifer, or the negative entity that we all like to pretty much blame for everything that happens negative on this planet, if there was such a thing, then it is entirely based upon ego and recognition, because it wants to be a god. Okay, so it is 100% based upon that. Now, the scariest thing for any superego is the idea that there is nothing there to recognize it as a god or a superego. Okay? Or that it cannot recognize itself as such. This is the reason why we come into this world inherently scared of the dark, is because our ego is automatically attached. It is literally, fused in with our image of ourselves. I mean, the image or the thought of who we are, what we've achieved here, okay? So, the thing is once we recognize ourselves as something which is alive, which is existing, the biggest fear is that that dissipates into nothing. This is the reason why the devil itself, it's kind of very strange, because we refer to this particular character as the Prince of Darkness, but the Prince of Darkness's greatest fear would be, in fact, the dark itself, because there would be no one there to recognize it as a god. Okay? So, that is intrinsic to everyone here who was within this personal, or within this sphere, is almost every single person, okay, unless completely suicidal and just trying to escape, okay, they do not want to dissipate into nothing. They want something to recognize them. So one must understand that the ego is entirely dependent upon awareness, observation, and recognition. The minute that you take all that away from it, it is no longer worthy. It is no longer recognizable. Okay? No longer palatable. There's no more tangibility. It's gone. Therefore, again, nothing to bow to it, nothing to pat it on the back. So this is one of the first and foremost things that we have to face when we come into this planet. Number one is the fact, okay, that this body, this robot body system, is going to die. Now, a lot of people have the idea in their heads that because the physical robot body is dead, that they no longer exist, or that intelligence ceases to operate anymore, that you have no more awareness of yourself. Well, there are many people and many beings that wouldn't mind going back to the void and being absolutely, completely nothing. But for those that choose something opposite, there is still hope, if you need that word, okay? The fact of the matter is energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It's already there. It's already cycling. It's already moving, okay? So regardless of whether your robot system, your biological system dies, chances are, unless things have been just completely wired against you, your consciousness will continue. Okay? It's all will and it's all choice. It's choice oriented. So, now the other thing is the idea of death or dark in general. Like I said, there's many fears that now branch out from those ideas, okay? Other fears that keep us occupied. The fact of the matter is, fear keeps us in the idea that we're still alive and that we need something to be fearful of, okay? So a lot of people pay good money to even feel the idea of fear. Pay money to go see horror movies. They'll pay money to watch action movies, which, get the adrenaline kicking. They pay good money to watch people get sliced and diced. They want their fears, okay? Fears define people. Fears still tell people that they're still alive. Fear gives that rush, that adrenaline, okay? Gives recognition. However, in a unified field, fear has absolutely no merit or no basis, okay? Because once one becomes completely tuned in and realizes who and what they are, they realize that to fear anything is merely to fear themselves, because literally your consciousness breathes in everything. It is a portion of everything. So, truly, unless you really want it, there's no reason to fear anything. Fear is an invention. It is an idea. And once you have become completely fearless and have reduced yourself from that vibration, you literally have absolutely nothing to fear, because you literally are inside and you think for everything. It thinks back for you if you so choose. Your atoms, your molecules, your consciousness, your energy spans through every square inch of everything. It just depends on how aware you are of that, and vice versa. Awareness is the key to pretty much everything. I've talked about that a lot. Awareness and observation are the keys to everything. See, the mere fact that observation exists, again, lets us know that we exist. It lets us know that we're here, that we're observable, and something that can observe us back, and that's what lets us know that we are alive. Now, this gets really deep because we can go into certain ideas that are branches even off of this idea, but it's something that will just twist your mind into circles and cycles. So the most important idea is to realize, again, that if you are literally part of everything, which you are, okay? If you are connected into everything, then there's absolutely nothing to fear external, because your outer surroundings will literally affect your internal state. I've been in a whole lot of situations in my life, many which have been life or death situations, and I can tell you this: the times where I had absolutely no fear, I didn't even have a change in my heart pattern. Everything worked out 100% perfect. But the moment that I reacted and immersed myself into that feeling of fear, that adrenaline, that testosterone, Okay, because what it does is it blinds your mind. You're no longer thinking in a logical platform, and in fact, fear can paralyze you. Okay? It can actually negate your ability to be able to run away, to fight, flight, whatever. Okay? But all the times where I was in those same situations, like I said, and was even remotely threatened, nothing occurred. I was not affected, okay? Because my internal state was calm, eventually it calmed my external state. So nothing outside of me became any sort of an enemy of which I feared. So everything is truly from within. There are people out there in their lives, they've never had a single fight in their lives. Not a single fight. They've never had a single situation of which was life or death oriented. It's because they don't bring those sort of things to themselves. There was a time earlier in my life when I did bring those things to myself, but I used those things as a test, as a means to make myself stronger. But the fact of the matter is, none of those things ever had to exist because I never had to create them. Fear will hinder your creative process, and the more that you feel fear internally, the more it will manifest outwardly. Okay? Unconditional love to you.